Good afternoon and most welcome to 1512 of the Heidegger series. We are at an odd location here outside the driver's license authority of Sweden. My colleague Kalle has just applied for a driver's license. Taking the opportunity in this protective area on this windy day to make an outdoor recording, which is always the best creativity. And today I will start a little bit with the book by John Briggs and F. David Peat, 7 Life Lessons of Chaos, Spiritual Wisdom from the Science of Change. And we have an upcoming course, maybe with the help of Kalle here, and I would suggest this to be part of the literature. It's a very subtle and easy introduction to chaos theory and the fractality of, for instance, Konrad Lorenz and Benoit Mandelbrot. I start at page 11, lesson 1 it's called, because it's 7 lessons of chaos. Being creative. Lesson of the vortex. Fitting rubric. How did a human being come to make the first arrowhead or the first cave painting? How is it that Einstein discovered the theory of relativity? What happens when we have an original thought? What is the nature of creativity? Why is there something rather than nothing? Chaos theory offers deep insights into these questions. Insights that bear on the nature of each of us as creative beings. Before exploring these insights, it's helpful to acknowledge that a great many people in our turn of the century society are profoundly ambivalent and misinformed about creativity. If you press them, they'll confess somewhat defensively that they do not really feel very creative, because creativity is a gift or a special talent reserved for a few. The idea that true creativity is limited only to special individuals is one of our great myths. Ironically, although people admire the products that creators make, poems, paintings, music, scientific discoveries, even believing that creators get to the essence of life, they have at the same time an image of creators being a little crazy. It is often said that creativity and madness go hand in hand. This fits conveniently with the idea that creativity is somehow abnormal. Many of us believe that creators exert control over the works. Something implicit in the high school literature teacher's favorite question: what did the poet mean to say? While at the same time subscribing to the view that creativity is essentially inspiration over which creators have no control. So to speak, it just comes to them. We also believe that a person can only be creative by working in one of the recognized creative fields, like music, film, painting, theater, or higher mathematics. We would not apply the word creativity to such acts such as observing nature, remembering a dream, talking with someone, or encountering a work of art. Yet poets and other artists have themselves long recognized that such acts are profoundly creative. A final myth, and one that is difficult to root out, is that the primary goal of creators is to make something new. The metaphor of chaos theory helps us get beyond these misconceptions, and in the process teaches us something creative about our lives. Self-organization, nature's magic. The image that heads this chapter is part of a Chinese scroll painting called 9 Dragons.
Ah. This cover, you mean?
Yes, it actually covers the book.
Mm-hmm. Ah. Mm. No. It's so bright, so it's difficult to see something. Mm-hmm. Right.
In China, dragons are associated with creative power. And here we see a dragon appearing out of a vortex. Ah, it's a composite here.
Oh. Oh. Difficult to see. We apologize to the viewers, but
Like this ancient dragon of chaos, the theory of chaos represents nature in its creativity. Embracing a vast range of behaviors, from weather patterns and waterfalls to the firing of neurons and sudden shocks on the stock market. It is as much about how nature makes new forms and structures as it is about nature's messiness and unpredictability. A good example of a broad spectrum of chaotic systems is a river. In the heat of the summer, a river runs slowly. Its surface appears calm and serene. Where it encounters a rock, the water parts and flows smoothly past. But in the spring, after heavy rains, the river has a different character. In this circumstance, one part of the river runs slightly faster than the neighboring region. And acts to speed up the stream around it. Which in turn exerts a drag on the faster flow. Each part of the river acts as a perturbing effect on all the other parts. In turn, the effects of these perturbations are constantly being fed back into each other. The result is turbulence, a chaotic motion in which different regions are moving at differing speeds. As the fast-flowing river approaches the rock, it swirls and turns back on itself. Behind the rock, a vortex is born and persists as a highly stable form. The river is demonstrating all the characteristics of chaos. Its behavior is highly complex, including random, unpredictable flows, eddies, and stable vortices. The image of the Chinese dragon of creativity coming out of a vortex turns out to be a fortuitous symbol for the theory of chaos. Look at the pause. Vortices are superlative. One is tempted to say almost miraculous. Examples of the way the zigzags and random traffic of the natural world gives birth to structured forms. The vortex of a tornado emerges out of intense thunderstorm activities and turbulent air. The well-known vortex of Jupiter's red spot, first noticed in 1664. Seems like a permanent feature. But it's actually a vast eddy ruling between giant airstreams that travel around the planet in opposite directions. Complexity theorists refer to the red spot, tornadoes, and other such phenomena as self-organizing out of chaos, or order for free. To see how this ordering out of chaos comes about, let's examine the formation of vortices in a pan of water. Turn on the heat beneath the pan, and the expected happens. Because hot water is lighter than cold water, water at the bottom of the pan pushes its way upward. Meanwhile, the heavier, cooler water at the top settles down. This rising and falling creates a chaotic competition. Chaos scientists say this system is exercising its maximum degree of freedom, the maximum range of behaviors available to the system. In short, the water is boiling. But what are degrees of freedom? Think of an orchestra in which each person, if she chooses to, could tune her instrument in an idiosyncratic way and play a different tune in a different key and tempo. The result would be the sonic equivalent of a pan of boiling water. The maximum possible range of behaviors within the orchestra, the largest degree of freedom. But orchestras and pans of water can also take on a different life. Chaos scientists discover that if water is heated in just the right conditions, below the actual boiling point, a transformation takes place, and the water self-orders into a pattern of geometric vortices. For this to happen, first, what is called a bifurcation point is reached. Then the system transforms itself. To grasp the idea of a bifurcation point, think of a ball in a pinball machine. The ball runs along a straight track until it hits one of the pins. At that instant, it can be flung off to the left or right. The pin is the bifurcation point in the journey of the ball. In the pan, the bifurcation point marks the moment when one of the random fluctuations in water becomes amplified by creating what is called a feedback loop. This loop begins to link with other fluctuations until many interconnected feedback loops create a series of stable hexagonal vortices or cells, like a honeycomb inside the pan. This linking involves two quite different kinds of feedback. One kind, called negative feedback, damps and regulates activity to keep it within a certain range. A familiar example of a negative feedback loop is the thermostat on an air conditioner. When the temperature rises to a certain point, the thermostat responds by turning on the refrigeration unit when the temperature drops too low. The thermostat turns the unit off. Negative feedback also operates throughout our bodies. If the sun is hot, as it is today, we sweat and cool down. When we are too cold, we shiver to produce heat. A second kind of feedback, called positive feedback, amplifies effects. This happens, for example, when a microphone is placed too close to a speaker system, as in my recording sometimes on Zoom. When the system takes up the feedback from the speaker, the sound goes That's a positive feedback loop. The microphone detects minute sounds in the room and feeds them to the sound system, where they are amplified and played through the speaker. In turn, the microphone picks up these louder sounds and feeds them back through the system until they quickly become a brain-splitting shriek. Systems like chaotic river, which are dominated by positive feedback loops, are turbulent and disorderly. But when negative and positive feedback loops couple together, they create a new dynamic balance, a bifurcation point where chaotic activity suddenly branches off into order. Put a point there. As we see here, It's pointing to a stability in a system, a stability that goes beyond what we normally call with stability. Think of the river in flux, as Heraclitus would say, constantly changing itself, never being the same at any instance. A vortex defies that picture. It is permanent and subsistent because of the changes, not despite of them. An incredibly important difference, which is, so to speak, in a completely different paradigm of chaos theory. I wonder what Heraclitus would have thought about vortices, or the incredible stability of a chaotic system, of which, for instance, galaxies are an example, is an example. And very important is the feedback system. What feeds back into the system makes the signal in the Zoom meeting higher and higher until it reaches a shriek, also called amplification. That's a disturbance that is single-handedly, because of the chaotic nature of reality, is making it stronger. Also, these incredible patterns that are created in rivers, in boiling pans, in nature itself, depict not only beauty but amazing structural integrity, not to be broken by anything, no weather, no storm, not even the passing of time. I would like to compare this to what we've done in this series with the idea of a stain or existence. Clinging to existence will stop the flow of positive feedback and make what we're clinging to unstable, fragile, dissolvable. Whereas allowing for non-existence, disturbances and contradictions, we make existence stronger, just like the vortex, and stronger beyond all powers of reality. Nothing beats the integral structure of a chaotic system, not even universe itself. And I'm also pointing that this can be brought to what we mentioned earlier, the inner sphere. How our thoughts can become stronger, our consciousness can become more integral, and briefly before we mentioned memory. And memory loss today is so incredibly common. And every try to keep the memory or consciousness undermines it, not allowing for disturbances or this positive feedback loop, which is so important. Maybe a question here or comment from Kalle? Well, he needs to rush. Just put him into the photo here and say thank you very much and have a very pleasant afternoon. Actually continue a bit here since we are on a positive feedback. In the example of the water in the pan at the bifurcation point, cellular vortices form with hot liquid rising through the centers and colder liquid descending along the outside. A large negative feedback loop. As one vortex butts up against another, stable hexagonal flowing cell walls are created between the descending cascades of falling cooler water. This self-organized system of heated water creates its structure by giving up some of the degrees of freedom it would have if it boiled. Think of it as an orchestra whose members decided they rather play in concert. They tune their different instrument to concert A and all play in the same key at the same tempo. The result is harmony, order, and a clearly defined musical structure. In a symphony, when each movement comes to an end, the music reorganizes in a new way, with different degrees of freedom being exploited to involve a new key and a new tempo. Systems that self-organize out of chaos survive only by staying open to a constant flow through of energy and material. Vortices in rivers and streams typically emerge out of the swirls of turbulence produced downstream from obstructions in fast, deep current. Each vortex has a definite shape. But is in reality composed of the material flowing through it. In a similar way, we ourselves are composed of the material constantly flowing through us. Our shape is created and sustained by the flux of which we are part. We are what we eat, what we breathe, what we experience from our environment. Many of the structures we see in nature are examples of self-organized chaos. The cupped hexagonal patterns on the surface of sand dunes, snow fields, and cloud layers result from chaotically organized vortices of warm air rising into the atmosphere, similar to the pan of water. These vortices remain stable as long as the conditions out of which they were created are kept within certain limits. Watch a flock of birds taking off from the trees, and you'll see another type of self-organization in action. The birds jockey frantically, trying to get free of the maelstrom of their fellows, and up into the air, wanting to be part of the group. Yet at the same time, trying to avoid collisions with each other. Computer models show that each individual's attempt to keep minimum and maximum distances from others causes flight paths to couple into feedback loops of attraction and repulsion. Positive and negative feedback balance so that the individual birds appear transformed into a single organism. In a similar way, a flock of sandpipers on a beach can turn as a unit faster than individual reaction times would allow. Random, highly energetic gases in interstellar space self-organize into galaxies and star systems. During the Earth's geological history, self-organization occurred as water ran across the great erosion channels left by melting glaciers. For one reason or another, some paths of water became amplified. More deeply grooved and linked into another, eventually forming the vast dendritic patterns of the relatively stable river system draining the continents. Some scientists believe that the complex DNA molecule, which contains rules that help guide our unfolding bodies, emerged out of a chemical flux in the early days of the Earth, much as the cellular vortices emerged in the pan of water. So it turns out that chaos is nature's creativity. Our bodies are pervaded by chaotic, open systems that allow a constantly creative response to a changing environment. For example, our brain self-organizes by changing its subtle connectivity with every act of perception. The list of ways that nature puts the principle of self-organized chaos to use is virtually endless. People who regularly engage in creative activities usually resonate immediately with the description of how chaos emerges into form, recognizing that they also collaborate with chaos. Looking at the way professional creators work with chaos gives us a well-documented glimpse into a process that is actually available to each of us. Because the simple truth is that we are all creative. Chaos and creativity, truth and the connection of the individual to the indivisible. For the human animal, creativity is about getting beyond what we know, getting to the truth of things. That's where chaos comes in. We are all necessarily conditioned by society. Our conditioning lays out with apparent certainty a seemingly complete picture or map of what reality is and how we're supposed to act in it. We're trained to accept and move about in this reality from the moment we emerge from the womb. Our habits of thought, opinions, and experiences, even the facts of the world, are similar to negative feedback loops that go round and round to keep us in essentially the same familiar place. Such loops of limiting negative feedback are obviously needed to keep society stable, but they can also be horribly confining if we come to believe that that's all there is to our lives. The danger we all share is of becoming like Pavlov's dogs, our glands reacting every time the bell rings. And society is full of bells. often enough, habits of mind, the supposed certainties of our knowledge about the world, produce distortions and deceptions about reality. More important, the opinions and facts that constitute our conditioning may end up obscuring a deeper authenticity and truth about our individual experience of being in the world. What do we mean by truth? Citation mark. In a culture of postmodern relativism, the word truth has become overloaded with unfortunate associations. It is difficult to use in any authentic ways. Many people today understandably avoid it, because those in the past who have claimed to possess truth tended to impose it on others, often by violent means. With all the diversity of our modern world, how are we to choose between the truths offered by various religions and cultures? But truth, in the way we mean it here, cannot be possessed and imposed on others. One of the early meanings associated with the idea of the true came in the context of the craftsperson who makes a thing straight and balanced. Similarly, a person's life can be true in the sense of moving in a straight way, being undistorted, and responding authentically to the present. Here, the word truth does not mean something absolute or relative. Truth is instead something lived in the moment and expressive of an individual's connection to the whole. The Indian philosopher Jiddu Krishnamurti described truth this way: truth is not a fixed point. It is not static. It cannot be measured by words. It is not a concept, an idea to be achieved. There is no path to truth, he asserted. Truth cannot be arrived at through technique or discipline or logic. It is not something that we agree or disagree about. Truth is what holds us all together, yet each must find its individually out of the terms and conditions of her and his own unique life. So we can see here too, ourselves and our consciousness are themselves chaotic systems. And in order to strengthen consciousness, will, as mentioned here by David F. Peat and Briggs, to strengthen what we seek for in our lives, inviting disturbances is of utmost importance to make what we are stable, solid, balanced. We need to choose a religious or philosophical system that helps that balance to come about, to strengthen the feedback loops, being able to take in what is disturbing, different, contradictive, out of the ordinary, as to make consciousness and your own system stronger and stronger. Make it defatigable, make it eternal. I like the term anti-fragile. Once you exposed yourself to sufficient enough of disturbances, your system will become stronger and stronger, and eventually it will be as a vortex, unstoppable, not something easily moved other by its own will, not constantly changing according to society's norms or the bells, as Peat calls it, of modern society. Instead, taking in what's contradictory, non-existence, as to make the system persistent. And I would say that strengthening tendency goes for thinking itself, which of course follow the same norms as anything else, since all the constituents of the universe are of chaotic, ground nature. They are chaotic systems that strengthen themselves by loops of difference. Think once more of the river. It's such a great metaphor, and how it strengthens more and more thanks to the flood of water, the disturbances in the water surface, and all those things are there to help the system to get stronger, not defects in reality or something to stay clear of. I also think of the horror vacui and what it caused in the Western thinking tradition. A weakening of the soul, a weakening of our will, intention, and consciousness into becoming codependent on everything that happens outside of it, as weak as possibly fathomable. So it's a hopeful turn with chaos theory and fractality, and the single strange attractor is the same attractor that keeps a galaxy together. I don't think it's very hard to understand how strong that could be. That is anti-fragility. Never ever give up. You become Muhammad Ali, you become like a rock, but you move, you thrive, and you grow thanks to the differences, not succumb to them or get destabilized. No, you thrive off of them. Well, I say thank you very much from the license authority. Then the bench is lecture. Thank you very much, Ribbon and David F. Peat, for a wonderful book. I am sure to get back to that one. Have a very pleasant afternoon. Bye bye for now.